Hey guys, we want also to get into the attribute of God that He's eternal. And the Bible mentions He's from everlasting to everlasting. It mentions the everlasting God, the eternal Spirit. We mentioned before about how God reveals Himself as the I Am, and part of that, in that revelation, integrated into that revelation, is when He says I am, that's a permanency that He is. And so there's an eternality to that. God is. Hebrews 11, I believe it's verse 6, says that he that cometh to God must believe that He is. Well, He is that way, and He doesn't change. He is who He is. He doesn't change. And thus there's an eternality to Him. And the Bible mentions that God inhabits eternity. And so He's not in His eternal state. And this is where it gets complicated, because we see God in His eternal state, as well as we see God operating within time and space. But time and space were created by God. God exists independent of time and space. Time and space is dependent upon Him. The whole creation is dependent upon God. God is dependent upon nothing. He just exists. So in His eternal state, He exists as the I Am. There's no past with God. There's no future with God. There's just the eternal present with God. It says His understanding is infinite. So He's not learning of Himself. He's not passing through like an infinite series of thoughts. Otherwise, His understanding would not be infinite. So when it says that His understanding is infinite, He is not learning from a series of thoughts. So part of the contradiction that emerges when people combine time and eternity, the concepts of time and eternity, is they think of time as a duration, a series of events, one event preceded by another event, preceded by another event. And when you see that in an eternal status or an eternal form, you end up with a problem of infinite regress. Like, you can't traverse an infinite series of past events, because as far as you travel through these series of events, whether they're thoughts or actions, as far as you travel through them, there's an infinity further to go. So from our perspective, God is from everlasting to everlasting. But from God's perspective, He inhabits eternity. He just is. And we see this with the ontological. You hear the terms ontological Trinity or immanent Trinity, and it's referring to God in His eternal state, as He is of Himself. And then you see the term economic Trinity, and we're going to discuss some of these a bit further, but the economic Trinity should be understood as God within time and space, operating for creation, redemption. And so we see. Sorry about that, the battery died. But we were talking about making a distinction between the immanent and the economic Trinity, God in His eternal state versus God within time and space. So this is necessary to make this distinction when you're reading the Bible, because otherwise you end up with problems eternalizing time and creating infinite regresses. So we have to see God interacting with His creation within time. We see God getting angry, God responding to prayer. We see God moved with compassion. We see Him operating within time, and we also see God in His eternal state. And we'll get more into this in the coming sessions, but just to get a distinction of God in His eternal state. He's eternal. He's from everlasting to everlasting, but He also does manifest Himself within time and space. So let's just stop there for the moment, and we'll pick it up in the next couple sessions. All right?